cannot be an honest researcher if you are not publishing your findings, whether they're agreeable to your personal ideas or not. I have had the privilege and honor to help hire the next generation of pro-life scholars. They claim they have a process for going about retractions, and they violated every step of that process. Defend the authors. We're going to defend good science. And just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it's not good science. What you see on the news is not always what happens.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Ever Living podcast. I'm one of your life-loving hosts, Jessica.
And I'm Jason.
We also have Jason. And today we have a very special guest. We have Karen Czarnecki. She's the executive director of the Charlotte Lozier Institute. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. Yeah. So how are you? So where are you based right now?
We are based in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, very cool. How's the weather there?
It's raining. It's cold and rainy, so not that great.
Okay, yeah, kind of
It's
same here.
It's going to be a bad weekend.
Yeah, I know. For Memorial Day, I'm like, all those people have all barbecues planned and everything. Like, I'm supposed to be going to a bonfire on Saturday, and I don't know. I think it's probably not going to happen because of the rain and stuff. So awesome. But well, yeah. So I'd love for you to, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Charlotte Lozier Institute and your background. That'd be great.
Sure. Well, I've been at Charlotte Lozier Institute for roughly 2.5 years now. And I guess you could say I got here by way of my policy and politics background. I've always worked in the intersection of politics and public policy. And I've usually been the one that's been marketing or doing external relations for a lot of different policy issues. I've done a lot on economic issues, regulatory issues, domestic policy issues when I worked in the White House eons ago. And I really, really love research and talking about it, but I've not always been the one that's been writing about the research. So the opportunity presented itself to come to Charlotte Lozier Institute, and I'll call it phase 2, work on phase 2. We have a lot of individuals who are nearing retirement or thinking of retiring. So I have had the privilege and honor to help hire the next generation of pro-life scholars. So this has been a really unique and rewarding experience.
Wow, that's really cool. That's awesome. Wow. Well, great. Well, yeah. Could you tell us a little bit, just, a little bit more about Charlotte Lozier for those that are unfamiliar, kind of like what you guys do?
Charlotte Lozier was a medical doctor, and she was a contemporary of Susan B. Anthony. And we are obviously the research arm of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. And in 2011, I think Marjorie Dannenfelser, the president of Susan B. Anthony, and other senior executives here said, there's a lot of information coming from the other side, but there really isn't a countermeasure to give evidence-based scientific, medical, and legal information that policymakers can use. So in 2011, they lured Chuck Donovan away from the Heritage Foundation. He had previously been at the Family Research Council and many other organizations. And Chuck is a well-known figure in the pro-life movement for, I'd like to say 2 decades, but it's more like 4 or 5 decades. And so Chuck was brought to Charlotte, to SBA and Charlotte Lozier Institute to figure out what a pro-life research organization would look like. And it has to be the gold standard in science. It's got to be the top medical, legal information that policymakers, elected officials can use. And it's not someone's opinion. It's really based and grounded in data and the science.
Very cool. Oh, that's so cool. That's so up my alley. It's like, it's like totally what I love. So yeah, that's wonderful. So yeah, so what is an example of how policymakers have used Charlotte Lozier's research, recently?
Well, the most famous example is during the Dobbs decision. Out of all of the amicus briefs that were submitted to the court, there were 17 briefs that cited, I should know this. There were 17 briefs citing 16 pieces of research from Charlotte Lozier Institute, and the Chief Justice during oral arguments was citing our research, not with attribution, but he did cite it. When you can have an impact and have courts and decision makers, whether it's in a White House, whether it's in an agency, whether it's on Capitol Hill, whether it's in the state legislatures, citing your information as really good scientific studies and reliable and trustworthy that really says that you're doing a great job. And I will also add that we have worked for the past couple of years extensively with state attorneys general who have used some of our researchers as expert witnesses in different litigation, defending pro-life laws. And that has been a really fruitful partnership. I know they rely upon us greatly for a lot of their research needs.
Can you talk about like the different areas that you guys have researched? So like, for instance, the Supreme Court, what was that area? And what are some of the other major areas that you guys have participated in historically?
Well, for the Supreme Court, I mean, it really varies, but it's typically looking at abortion laws, the type, whether women have informed consent, whether there are mental health complications with, I mean, a lot of the amicus briefs that we've submitted or where people have cited us have really looked at a variety of our research on a whole bunch of issues. Predominantly right now, it's been on abortion drugs and the research findings from abortion drugs, or our peer-reviewed research that has been that shows the prevalence of adverse events in sending women to the emergency room after having an abortion. And there's a different piece of research, peer-reviewed research, that says that people have been told to lie about taking abortion drugs and to claim that they had a miscarriage. So a good portion of what we've done is peer-reviewed research, and that's really what shows up being cited in court cases and in litigation.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So is there any anything that is coming up that you guys are working on now that you think that would be interesting for our listeners to keep an eye on, like watch out to be published?
We just submitted yesterday to a peer-reviewed journal information looking at the supply-induced demand from Planned Parenthood. I was told today, this is not a follow-up study, but this is a study using a more extensive all-payer insurance database. It's been in the news for the past 6 or 9 months or so, and yet to date, no one has done a peer-reviewed study using that database. When I say an all-payer claims, it means private insurance and commercial insurance, government insurance, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, whether it's SSDI, whether it's veterans. So we have access to this very large database, and we're going to be rerunning some of our studies and looking for new research questions to see if we cannot answer some of the questions that we've had for quite some time. So the next, I won't say what the next study is because we're still waiting for the data on that. So I'm not going to let the cat out, but I will say that we submitted something for peer review yesterday, and hopefully that will be accepted, and other individuals and policymakers will be able to rely upon it.
Very cool. So speaking of other individuals, besides policymakers, what is your audience? Is it just generally policymakers? Do other people use your research?
Well, policymakers is our number one audience, but it's also the other pro-life organizations. We want to make sure that the solid research, the gold standard research that we're putting forth can be used by anybody in the pro-life movement. Some of our research studies could take upwards of a year, and we have anywhere from 5 to 10 people in some of those peer-reviewed studies. And it's costly, it's time consuming, and you really have to have that academic background to be able to do that. So we'd like to think that a lot of the research we're doing, we would like everybody to feel that it's solid, trustworthy, and reliable, and anybody can use the data and the science back, within those research reports. So it's policymakers, whether that's Congress, whether it's governors, whether it's state legislatures, sometimes it's administration, sometimes it's agency personnel, sometimes it's state attorneys general. It could be different committees in Congress, and it really could be the media. We have a lot of media saying, could you really explain that to us? What does this mean? What really is an adverse event? And what do these numbers mean? What are the odds ratios based upon the research that you're looking at? So it's really a wide variety of individuals, and it even goes down to, I'll say, medical schools. We have, in the past 4 months, hired a couple of medical students who are interested in peer-reviewed pro-life research, and we're doing a pilot study right now, and we are training them to do research. And some of them will be on some of the studies that'll be submitted for peer review in the coming months. So, and it's really for the general public. academic research is very complicated. And what we like to do is take the very complicated nature of the research and break it down into the short takeaways, where the key findings. We put those in executive summaries. We put those in different charts and graphs. And I will say that in the past 2 years, we focused a lot more on our social media presence and making sure that a lot of those, I'll call them factoids, are out there and can be used, again, by anybody that wants to.
Very cool. So I do have a question kind of going off of the audience question. So I used to work for Students for Life. I worked for them for 2 years, and I was their New England regional coordinator. And sometimes on campus, I would cite Charlotte Lozier's research. And I often had students be like, well, that's a biased source. That's a pro-life source. So what would be your response to that? How would you respond to people who are like, oh, well, that's just because pro-lifers are doing this research?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I first showed up here and I talked to our vice president of data analytics, Dr. Czarnecki, and I said, what if you had a research question and the research showed you that you were wrong, or that it was a different set of, here you were looking at one question and you got the opposite answer in your research? I said, would you publish it? And he said, that's a really good question. And he said, absolutely, we have to publish it because it's all about the science. He said, you cannot be an honest researcher if you are not publishing your findings, whether they're agreeable to your personal ideas or not. So everything we do really is data. It's backed by the data. It's peer reviewed. Oftentimes, everything we've done is based upon the peer reviewed research, which does go out for vigorous criticism among people in that field. And we'd like to say that we're honest. I'm not a scientist, but I work with honest scientists and people who believe in the truth and would expose individuals to the truth. And you cannot make, I'll say, an informed decision about any issue, including abortion, if you don't have all the facts. If you're only getting fed one set of facts from what I will say are very biased sources, that's problematic. You need to put the information out there so that people can make good decisions based upon science.
Absolutely.
So along those lines, like I feel like during COVID, a lot of people started feeling like science was becoming politicized, or at least some people did. And later on, we found out certain things. So we won't go into that because that's another controversy we don't need to enter.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
but that is something I've heard a bit, is that people feel like science is getting politicized. Do you have any experience in your work?
Yes, we do.
Like
as a matter of fact, we are in the middle of an arbitration right now. We have taken a large publisher to court based upon a breach of contract because we had 3 studies, one of which was cited by the Supreme Court, or in all the amicus briefs to the Supreme Court. And they basically decided to retract studies because they didn't like the findings, or they said, oh, this wasn't good science. Well, it was good science when you publish it 2 and 3 and 4 years after the fact to say there was a problem with the process, and we had to retract. I mean, so we're in the process of dealing with this right now. It's been going on for 3.5 to 4 years. In the month of June, there will be a hearing in California, and I can only talk about the process. I am not one of the 10 authors on any of the studies that were retracted, but because of the nature of the issue and then how this could be sensationalized, there's a protective order on a lot of the information. So I don't know all the nitty gritty with everything that's happened, but I've got a pretty good sense, the 30,000 foot level of what's happening. So we're basically going to defend the authors. We're going to defend good science. And just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it's not good science. So that's our ongoing battle right now, and I'd like to think that we're going to win it.
And wasn't the timing of that retraction kind of suspect?
Yes. Well, the fact that there was, I won't go to there's assaultonscience.org is a website up until the judge told us we couldn't post anymore. If anybody wants to go and look at all of the documents and see that there was an expression of concern. It took a year and a half for the retractions to actually occur. But the authors sent very pointed letters to the publisher saying, tell me what's wrong. Show me where my numbers are wrong. Tell me where the science is wrong. And these the concerns were never addressed. It was just eventually swift action taken with no rationale behind it whatsoever. And I think in the proceedings, we will find out there was some bad activity. There was some intentional individuals who wanted to suppress good pro-life science. That's as much as I can say on that.
Of course, yeah. I as a researcher myself, I was kind of upset when I heard about this, because usually, I mean, papers get retracted here and there, but
Not
typically
often. Not often.
not super often, but they do. Things happen. Retractionwatch.org, for instance, if you want to go see them real time.
Retraction Watch did a very nice write-up about this entire situation when they were first retracted. Yeah. And he basically, the main author of that said there was no reason for it. He said the publisher did not follow the COPE guidelines. They claim they have a process for going about retractions, and they violated every step of that process.
Well, and the thing that got me upset is, as a researcher, when I see a retracted paper, it's still usually up on the publisher website. It just has a giant red retracted across it or something.
Yes.
But in the case of this Lozier paper, they deleted it. And I think this was during a Supreme Court decision, while they were deciding, and they were referencing this paper, they actually deleted it. So you couldn't get to it anymore.
Well, we thought they deleted it too, but it's so hard to find. What they did was not ethical behavior for a publisher. They wanted to make it very difficult for people to find it. So,
okay. And what year did this happen?
This happened. The retractions happened roughly a year to a year and a half ago. But the expression of concern. I mean, this has been a very long process. This is almost going on 4 years now.
Okay.
And the sad part about it is we are defending the authors. The authors' research is their own. We didn't tell them what to write or how to write it or where to submit it for publication. But the real intent, in my belief, was to not only suppress pro-life research, but to put the fear of God into individuals, that if they write anything that goes against the culture, against people's perceptions of abortion, they're going to go after you. And I think the thought was that none of these individuals could defend themselves in a court. It's an incredibly expensive proceeding, and we are doing the right thing by standing behind the authors and standing behind their research. And we think people need to know the truth. The truth, whether you like the outcome or not, you should see the research and make an informed decision for yourself, whether it's good science or not. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, we'll be praying for the outcome of that for sure.
Thank you.
It's crazy. So, well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do on a day-to-day. So you're the executive director. So what does your role look like at Charlotte Lozier?
I keep everything moving on a day-to-day basis, from overseeing the research agenda to making sure that we're meeting deadlines. I work with internal scholars and external scholars. If we don't do the research in-house, we're only a small team of 13, but we've got an extensive network of up to 70 associate scholars around the country who are experts in their field. Sometimes we will commission studies that they will do independently, but in their subject expertise. And so I keep track of all of that. I do the budgets. I handle some development work. I coordinate with other organizations, sometimes coalition work, but most importantly, I keep track of what's happening on the litigation front to see where we could be helpful with any potential legal research. So a little bit of everything.
Very
the only thing I don't do, I don't oversee the interns. I can't handle that. Somebody else has to oversee the interns.
Fair enough. That's cool. Very cool. I'm curious on a different thing. Do you still teach for TFAS?
I do.
Oh.
Still doing that.
What is TFAS for those of us who are not as familiar?
It is an organization that's roughly 55 years old, and it brings students from different universities to Washington for a semester, typically a summer or a semester, where they get, they have internships, typically in some policy organization or on Capitol Hill or in a federal agency. And then they take different courses. They're required to take an economics course, and then there's some optional courses. I teach the public policy internship seminar. So my whole goal is to talk about the inner workings of how policy is made in Washington, the differing power structures, and not to teach what happens in a government textbook, but really what happens behind the scenes. What are the considerations that congressmen actually think about when it comes to voting? What is weighing on their mind? How does the oversight process work? Does it work? Does it not work? So it's a real critical analytical look of policy making in Washington.
Yeah, I loved your class. That was so much fun.
Thank you. Well, the funny thing is most people 5 years after the fact, if they come back to Washington or come back to a TFES event, they're going, you were right. I thought you were, I didn't think you were, really telling us the truth. And I'm like, no, I've had a lot of jobs in Washington, mostly involving policy or politics. And what you see on the news is not always what happens. You're seeing the glossy, prettied up version rather than the real considerations that people have in the whole policymaking process.
Fair enough.
Isn't there a term for people, when you're an expert in something and you read the news about it, like a lot of times you're like, wait, that doesn't sound quite right. But then I think there's some term for the fallacy that I believe that, but when I read news about things I don't know about, I believe that 100%.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I get your joke.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the power of knowledge, right? That's like why it's so important. That's why they say knowledge is the thing. You always keep learning because people can't take that away from you. So,
well, what's really crazy is when you read the newspapers, or I use the Wall Street Journal a lot for the classes and giving different examples. It's so funny when you're looking at stories, you're like, I worked with that person, or I know I know a lot of people who show up in the news, in the policy news in Washington. And I've crossed paths with them at some point in my career, and it's actually very funny. I mean, sometimes you met them once, and other times you worked with alongside them for 2 years, and to see them quoted or to be elevated to such positions of great significance in policy making, it's actually kind of fun.
That's cool. Now I feel like Washington is like a very close knit. Like it's a big city, but it's like. Yeah, I definitely felt that when I'm not there anymore, but like when I was there, I just feel like everybody knows each other in some way and everyone's connected. Like, what is it?
It's true, which is why you have to be very careful if you're going to basically stab somebody in the back. Chances are that person's going to know you, have an opportunity to refer you or to hire you, especially if you do consulting work around, Washington politics. You have to be careful of who you want to trip up, because it could come back to haunt you.
Yeah. No, fair enough. But, well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. We'd love to hear about how people can, keep in touch with Charlotte Lozier. Like, do you guys have a website, social media? Like, what's the best
the lozierinstitute.org is our website, and all of our studies are on there. There's chock full of information. We are recently on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not really on Instagram. But we've started an Instagram account. Our biggest number of followers are on Facebook. We have a lot of engagement, a lot of people who interact with us on Facebook. LinkedIn, not so much, but we are on LinkedIn. It's more, most people follow us on Facebook. So
okay. Very cool.
Lots of good information if you're interested in the subject matter.
Definitely. Well, that's our listeners. So I'm sure that they'll definitely enjoy this episode and hopefully go follow you guys. So, well, thank you so much, Karen. We really appreciate you coming on. And
good to see you, Jessica, and nice to see you again, Jason.
Good to see you too. Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Okay. Well, take care.
Take care. All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Ever Living podcast, a podcast by New Hampshire Right-to-Life, New Hampshire's oldest and most active pro-life organization. You can learn more about our work and learn how to get involved at www.nhrtl.org. If you would like to donate to our mission, you can make a donation at www.nhrtl.org/donate. See you next week. May God bless you and be very near to you, and may you be ever living.